financial analysis, right? And so one of the first steps is always going to be building out a financial model. And the heart of the financial model is truly the income statement. And the income statement at its most simple form is here. You have revenue in all its different sources and all its different drivers. You've got cost of goods sold, which comes out of revenue to give you gross margin. You have sales and marketing, R&D, as well as general and administrative and other. Altogether, those can be defined as SG&A. The R&D is typically broken out if it's a material part of the expense. Remove SG&A and R&D from gross margin, and you have what's EBITDA, which is a rough proxy for the profitability of your business. EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And so what we're doing with a financial model is looking to crystallize and make clear the amount of revenue that's being generated by a business, as well as its earnings and profitability, the other parts of the financial statement, cash flow statement, and balance sheet. Now, these are really important because you give them over to your allocator partners, and the allocator partners use that to determine whether or not you're going to be a suitable fit for them. And so you want to have information that's both accurate, clear, and concise. Now, there's a lot of different types of businesses, but almost all businesses generally fit within these specific line items on the income statement, though you are going to see very, very different amounts. Now, one of the other benefits of having a well laid out, clear financial model is that it's a planning tool. You're able to take a look and see where you are, where you're going. You're able to take a look and actually see if you're on track towards meeting and executing your goals. And then you're able to take a look and say, is this what I'm looking for? Now, these are the financials for WellStack as we've come and built up this company. For me, as I'm looking at this, it gives you an eagle-eye picture of what's going on in the financial situation, and it allows you to start leveraging strategic planning. In this instance, I can look at this and go, once we reach the approximate $1 million threshold, given the current M&A environment, there's going to be the ability for us to look for capital and look for M&A targets, and to use that to drive additional growth, right? And so that's something that I may not have had clarity on if I'm head down in the foxhole behind my weapon firing away. I may not have that tactical command level understanding of it, but this financial model brings it home. And so using that financial model, I'm able to go back to the different ways of financing a business and say, well, which of these are going to make the most sense for me? And I go for WellStack. Well, we've got private credit. Certainly, as I look at M&A, we've got ARR based loans. We have looked at previously crowdfunding
with Mitch Cole
as well. And then we've also got the potential to use family offices.
No, they got to balance the team.
Lastly, we've got the ask, where we're able to talk about what is it that you're looking for? What are you using this capital for? So yeah, then if you've got any press or anything else you want to highlight, you would include this as well. And then lastly, the contact info for everyone. I had the chance to meet Colin Powell at West Point in 1998. He was being honored there. And it's one of the rare photos that I have from that time. And so I wanted to share that as well. But I'll run back to this very quickly. This presentation you could use as a starting point to reach out to any capital allocator and get the ball going. They would come back with additional questions, additional document requests, but this would be sufficient to begin the conversation. And so I'll share with you a bit of the VetCap platform and what we've been building. Really fun. And so this is the onboarding portion where you'll share a bit about your business, and you'll provide insights as to what you guys are doing. We're then able to use that information to match you up against over 200 allocators, including Aaron and Colin, plenty of others, and see who makes the most sense, right? And then begin to gather the information that's required for them to get an allocation, and then have that position to go live and to expedite this process. And so, Ari, maybe you can talk a bit about some of the deals we've worked on. And by Colin, if you've got a chance, would love for you to hop in there and say hello. I know you're doing deals live during the call. It's that busy. But if you do get a chance to, please just say hello, hop in anytime.
No, sorry, I've been meaning to do so.
Oh, cool. Oh, good. We got a lot of veterans in here, and Colin, tell me a bit about your background, please.
U.S. Naval Academy, the Marine Corps, ground side, 7.5-ish years. Had a few different jobs over the years. Actually, my last several were actually with an Army unit based out of DC on the intel side. So I actually spent some time Army side, a lot of Marines in there, but so Marine Corps and Army experience, some tours in a sandbox. I got out in 2004. Actually got a little banged up. Nothing that affects me on a day-to-day basis, thankfully, but couldn't do that anymore. And I went to business school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and to a certain extent, still trying to figure it out. But ended up in restructuring, helping companies, fix companies. First, really on the operational side on the ground, and then more on the balance sheet side at an investment bank. And then went over to Brightwood about 10, 11 years ago, helping finance small businesses, mostly debt, but debt and equity. We do control equity deals as well, helping grow. What we bill ourselves at is in a continuum of risk and a continuum of capital. And there's a lot of different buckets, right? But one thing we try to do is to help companies grow. And there's not a lot of companies that are actually doing that left. The banks are useless through a combination of greed in terms of risk, right? Through, oh, I don't want to take that level of risk anymore. Let's just do the bigger, safer stuff. We don't need to take that, there's no community lending or the banks. And not just that, but really the regulators killed these banks too. Right. So banks don't act the way they did in the 60s and 70s and 80s and probably even the 90s. Places like Brightwood wouldn't exist if the banks were still doing what they were really intended to do. So ideally, we find companies that are, non-sponsored, and by that I mean there is no private equity sponsor in there yet. 3, 4, 5, 10 million EBITDA, whatever it is, and help them grow. And so we've carved a niche out within that space. That's why Andrew and I chat. Well, we chat anyway, but there is a tremendous amount of opportunity there. So that's what we try to do.
And then I love Marines, man. You guys are so great. Cool. We'll get into some war stories, which I love your war stories so much. They're so entertaining. But we got a few questions here. I want to make sure that we get to them all. We were talking about, Chuck asked about the perspective on the relative cost of capital for the options that we're talking about in private credit. And so I'll address this because I see all different types of capital allocators, and on the very lowest end, if you can get a loan from a bank, and that's a very big if right now, you're going to end up seeing rates that are, I'd say, in the eights. Is there eights are like about as cheap as you're going to get, right, guys, for like regular way, super plain vanilla bank financing, and then as you get into the mezzanine, you're going to start to see low teens, 12, 13, 14. And then as you get, huh? Is that
I'd
high?
say today it's higher.
Yeah.
I would say we think about it. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say mid to high teens is what I see on the low end.
Yeah. It's also a function of the treasury, right? Because you have SOFR, LIBOR, right? So the banks are really S+2 or S+3.
Yeah.
And being percentage points. So whereas for a decade, LIBOR/SOFR was 1-2%, bank rates were probably 5-6%. Now they're still S+3, but now the S is 4 or 5. That's SOFR. LIBOR and SOFR are the curves that the banks operate under. LIBOR is going away, SOFR's taken over. So right now it's still SOFR +3, but SOFR is now 4 or 5. So it is 7, 8, 9%, which pushes everything up, right? Which pushes us up. Normally we're typically in the bigger funds that we do, unitranche, direct lending, private capital, the bigger sponsor type deals, you're in the S450, S550, S650 range. That's now not 7, 8%. That's now 10, 11, 12%, which pushes, and everybody gets pushed up from there. So mezz is now, 12, 14 cash plus fees plus, whatever. Now they're 15, 16. So everything's gotten pushed up. But I would say to a comment earlier, you always try and get the cheapest cost of capital you can, but not at a stupid price, right? So if somebody wants to invest equity, and you don't really want to give any up, but they add a tremendous amount of value to you, then you take that money. All right. So it's, if they can add value and they can help you grow, then keep the big picture in mind, what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. And owning a little bit less of a company that's 10 times bigger than what you are today is worth it.